The ambulance arrived, and I was quickly brought to the hospital. When Kevin initially learned of our accident, he rushed to the hospital, appearing concerned. At first, I assumed he was really concerned for my and my mother's well-being, and that he had come to see us. But then he kept bringing up the trip, agonizing about whether we'd still be able to travel and worried that the money he'd invested would be wasted. The physicians eventually advised us that, due to my concussion, I would need to spend a few days in the hospital for observation. They wanted to make sure I was okay before allowing me to return home, but travel was obviously out of the question for me. Kevin glanced at me, irritated, as if I was to blame for getting into the accident and wasting his money. My mother half-heartedly offered to remain with me while I was in the hospital. It gave me hope that she would choose to help me during such a tough moment. Kevin, on the other hand, was quick to respond, stating that because our plane tickets had already been purchased, we were already losing money by not going. He argued that my mother should not waste even more money by staying behind. He then turned to me and said that at my age, I should be able to stay in the hospital alone for a few days. He mentioned how safe the hospital was, with physicians and nurses available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, hinting that I had nothing to worry about. Kevin then insisted that once I was discharged, he would arrange for a babysitter to stay with me at home. I argued with Kevin that I didn't want to be alone in the hospital or have a babysitter look after me at home. I urged my mother to stay with me instead. At first, my mother tried to defend me, telling Kevin that it wasn't proper to leave me alone in the hospital. She knew it was wrong. Kevin, however, continued to push back. He insisted that my mother's presence was unneeded and that her staying would mean sitting by my side doing nothing meaningful all day. He made it appear as if her presence was pointless, entirely neglecting the emotional support she could truly offer. Kevin prioritized avoiding spending his vacation money over anything else. It was evident that he didn't consider me to be his biological child, thus he didn't care how I felt or what had happened to me. I pleaded that at 15 years old, I shouldn't be left alone in the hospital. I was terrified and in agony, and the prospect of going through this without any family members around was overwhelming. I proposed a solution, stating that Mom could contact my father to come and stay with me while she and Kevin went on their trip. Sure, it would take him some time to get here because he lived in another city, but I was confident he'd come right away if he realized I was in the hospital. I figured this would allow them to continue their vacation while keeping me company. But Kevin rejected the notion almost immediately. He ignored my concerns, calling me foolish for making such a huge deal about small injuries. He dismissed my notion of calling my father, arguing that it would just make him worry more. Kevin felt there was no need to interrupt anybody else's plans over something as minor as a concussion and a fractured arm, which he believed would mend well with a few days of hospital rest. In the end, Kevin's pressure was effective.